Vande Oma Guru Vajradhara Sumati Munish Uta Vardani Shri Bad Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Oma Guru Vajradhara Sumati Munishas Uta Vardani Shri Badra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Oma Guru Vajradhara Sumati Munishas Uta Vardani Shri Badra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Oma Guru Vajradhara Sumati Munishas Shri Badra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Pakyuke kudan dagi alu pakyuke sundan dagi nga pakyuke tukdan dagi yi ten yerme çiktu çingi alu makyuke kudan dagi lu makyuke Tukdan da geyi tün yerme çıktı çingi alo Om Muni Muni Mahamuni Shakya Chonamla chancho pardo dani kyapso chin dage jinso gibe sonam ki drola pinchra sange drupar sho sange chedan soge chonamla chancho pardo dani kyapso chi dage jinso gibe sonam drola pinchra sange drupar Sho sange chedan tsoge chonamla chancho pardo dani kyapsuchi sonam ki drola pinchira sange drupar sho nel Buddha, nel Dharma e nel
The Buddha, Dharma and Sangha, I take refuge until enlightenment. Through the practice of generosity and the other perfections, may I obtain Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings.
Namo ya lai ke da ludan nue jin ke drubundan da mi ke nam da drowa kun ke dranam che tsampa tham che ke to da ge che ten to. Buonasera.
Good evening.
Io prima o poi prenderò il coraggio
Sooner or later, I will take the courage.
che qualche volta
And
lo
sometimes I've already said
che rimane una voglia da qualche parte.
that there is like a wish
Di un
somewhere
giorno poter fare
of one
come uno dei
day
miei maestri ha fatto, di
to
rimanere
do
in
just as
silenzio
one of my masters
quei
did, to
3-4
just
secondi.
be silent for those like 45
Perché
minutes.
secondo me anche
Because
quando c'è da fare un
according to me,
insegnamento,
also when there
io
is
non ho mai
like to
preparato
give like a
nulla,
teaching, I never
per un
prepared
momento più
anything, but the
faticoso
most difficult
serve proprio il
moment
silenzio.
is like to break the silence.
Perché quando
Because
siamo più persone, ma
when
già
there
già
are
due
more people,
persone,
but already
ma
actually
una
two
già
people,
basta.
also actually just one person.
Quando ci sono in più,
But when
in
there are
quanti,
more,
il
that
silenzio
there
ha
is
un
even
valore
more that
meraviglioso.
the silence has a beautiful value,
Ed è qualcosa
and it's
che
something
in qualche
that
modo
somehow
un po' temiamo.
we fear a little bit.
No? E per dire, quando siamo con qualcuno non
Like
dici
when we
niente
are with
perché non parla.
someone and that person
Sarà che
doesn't
c'è
say
qualcosa che
anything.
non va.
Why is he not
Ho
saying
già
anything?
sentito
Is there
persone
something
che
wrong?
si preoccupano,
I've
no, ma
already
io
heard
quando sono con
people
gli altri non
like
so bene
worrying,
cosa dire.
but when I'm with the
Adesso
others, I
io ho
don't
detto
really know
meglio
what to
non dire
say.
niente che dire altre
Then I
cose.
usually tell
Spesso è
them,
meglio non dire
often
nulla.
then it's better to not
No?
say
Però
anything.
esiste questo
But there
bisogno
is
di
this need of
interagire con le
interacting
parole.
with words,
E noi spesso
and
anche siamo
often
abituati a un
we are
bisogno
also
di dover
used
in
to
qualche modo,
having a need of
come posso dire,
somehow
avere tante informazioni,
having a lot of information,
dimenticandoci che in
forgetting
realtà
that
quando noi
actually
siamo con
when we
qualcuno,
are with someone else,
noi comunichiamo
we
molto di
communicate
più
much more
senza le parole che con le
without
parole.
words than actually with words.
No? Esiste anche
There is also
uno studio,
a study,
no, nella
a research
neurolinguistica,
on
che
neurolinguistic,
all'interno della
and
neurolinguistica c'è
inside
uno
this
studio
branch
che mi è
there is
stato
a study
riferito
that I've
che
been
diceva che, se mi
talked
ricordo
about
bene, nella comunicazione fra due
that
persone
says
circa il
that in the
7%
communication
è
between two
verbale,
people, like around
ma tutto l'altro 93% è
7% is
tono della
verbal,
voce,
and then the
procedere,
remaining
il modo in cui la
93%
persona si
there is like the
pone, c'è
tone of the voice,
l'aspetto
the way the
fisico, c'è
person poses herself,
l'intenzione,
the
c'è
intention,
un'infinità di
an
altre
infinity
cose
of other
insieme
things together
che ci permettono
that
di comunicare
allow
in un
us
modo
to
molto più
communicate
profondo.
in a much deeper way.
Non lo so, quando noi ci troviamo dinanzi a
When we
qualcuno,
are in front of
in
someone.
realtà noi spesso
Actually,
pensiamo che quello
often
che
we
noi
think that what we
capiamo è quello che la
understand
persona ci
is
sta
what
dicendo con
the
le parole,
person has told
ma in
us
realtà noi
with the
stiamo
words, but
captando
actually
tante altre
we are
informazioni su
we are kind
tantissimi
of
altri livelli. Non so se avete mai provato
receiving many
di
other
dire
things on
quello
many
stesso
different
tono, nello
levels.
stesso
I
modo,
don't know if you've ever
qualcosa che non
tried to
c'entra
say
assolutamente
something
nulla. Non è così. Di
with the
solito uno
same
non
tone,
capisce.
something that doesn't
Poi
have
qualche volta ci
to do
provo.
anything in between with what you're saying.
Ovviamente
Usually the other
non in
person
un
doesn't
contesto
even
come
realize.
questo.
Me,
Però
sometimes I've
magari stai
tried,
parlando
not in a
con una
context like
persona con
this,
cui
but
c'è
maybe
un
you're
po' di
talking with a
intimità, poi
person
in
with
mezzo
which you
dici
have
una
some
cosa al
intimacy,
limite
and then
assurda.
in the middle you just say something completely
O
absurd. That
raramente
person
la persona lo
rarely
percepisce come
will
qualcosa assurdo,
perceive that as
come
something
non
absurd,
importante.
as if that didn't get
No, hai
inside.
ragione.
One
Il
of the
modo in cui
reasons,
si parla,
the way that you
tante
talk,
cose che vanno
many
insieme,
things that go
oltre il
together
fatto
with
che
it,
noi
other
in
than
realtà
the
quando
fact that actually
ascoltiamo,
when we
questo non è il
listen,
punto su cui volevo
this is
parlare,
not
però
the point
è
that I wanted to
interessante
talk
anche,
about today, but it's also interesting.
noi
We
costantemente cerchiamo di
constantly
prevedere il
try
futuro,
to predict the future.
anche mentre noi ascoltiamo,
Also, as we
in realtà,
hear, as we listen,
mentre l'altro parla, noi
as the
stiamo
other
già
person is talking,
prevedendo
we are
che
really
cosa
actually
verrà detto.
predicting what will be said.
Per questo che se si fa
So,
una
for
frase
this,
che uno
like if
immagina
you
che verrà detto una cosa, poi
make
invece
make
dice
up a
un'altra,
sentence and a person is expecting someone to be
mentre
said, and
noi facciamo
actually
fatica a
something
capire
else
che
is
magari
said,
se la
then we
frase
have
non è
a
completa,
difficulty of
chiara, poi
understanding
capisci
that.
comunque quello che si voleva dire in parte, perché noi siamo comunque abbiamo questa
And
funzione di
somehow, yes, we have this
predicare,
function of
senza
predicting,
entrare
but
nei
now
dettagli
let's not
ovviamente.
get into the
Però fatto
details of
sta
this.
che noi
But
abbiamo un
anyway,
livello
we
enorme
give a tremendous level of importance to words. When there are actually many other ways of communicating that are that are also very important, and a bit as a joke, but also putting light on a problem. We have had millions of years of evolution to then get to a system that is extremely evolved, where we not only hear the word, but we also see the facial expression, the smell that the other person is emanating. There is like an infinity of things that we can take to understand what the other person is saying, and then we believe that we can replace all of this with just text messages. Then one feels that it's not enough, then you put emoticons, trying somehow to put something out. Then there are, from the emoji, you have like all the others that send like the strange things, those that do sort of movements. But it's a way to kind of try to say something that goes beyond that written word. But it doesn't work. It doesn't work. And sometimes I remain a bit speechless, because as if it wasn't enough with all the difficulties of communication when we are in front of each other and we look at each other in the eyes, then on top of that we want to replace that communication with a communication that maybe takes just the 7% of that. And so one of the points that where I see a lot of conflict is in communication. And one of the aspects where conflict is born is that we have quite naturally the tendency of having the pretension of knowing what the other person wants to say. I don't know if you have ever had this thing. When another person is writing or talking or doesn't talk, I know what you want to say. When the other person says, no, but didn't want to say that, now you say that. It's not true. To me, it has occurred to discuss with someone that said, no, but you wanted to say this. No, actually, but you felt this thing, you're feeling this. Actually, no. If there is something about which I can talk about, is about what I feel, about what are my feelings, my thoughts. Even if it has already happened to me, someone, they will come to me, you are feeling this. Initially I said no, but then actually I thought about it and I said, yes, you're right, because there are times that we have some dynamics of attraction, aversion, that one, before recognizing of what is happening, then actually the others have already realized before you do. This is also something that happens, but in general, what are my emotions, I know. But we have this tendency of wanting to say, no, but I know what you wanted to say, I know what you're feeling, you're thinking this, you did that for that reason. How often have we judged someone else that somehow, as if we knew perfectly what goes through the other's person's mind? It happens quite every day, that we judge the motivations, the intention, the why and the how one person does a certain thing. And one of the things that often creates difficulty is communication, is the fact that we will have a hard time to have a communication that is really fluid, where we can really find like a meeting point, where what I'm saying is being understood in a way that is quite coherent with what I wanted to say. Actually, it's something very important for us somehow to work on this. And here there is the fact of One, remembering that what we feel from the other is not what the other said. And this, for me, is fundamental. So, when I'm talking with someone, what I feel is not what you're saying. What I hear is what I understand. And the other important thing is to try, that it seems contradictory with what I've just said, but on the other side, at the same time, that what I receive is not what you've said, but what I am able to understand. On the other hand, it is important for me to try to understand what you're saying beyond my own feelings, beyond my attractions and aversions. Because very often when we listen to someone else, we put like a filter. So if you have aversion, then you can say whatever you want and it will be wrong. If, on the other hand, I have an enormous attraction, whatever you say is beautiful. It's also when you say like, ah, nobody's thinking, ah, nobody will have a reason for that. And so it's important to remember that when we listen to someone else, we put a big filter in between that are our own attractions, aversions, tiredness, anger, jealousy, fear, envy, and so on. And so, on one hand, I remember that what I hear is what I hear. It's not what the other person has said. And at the same time, it's important for me to understand what are the filters that I'm putting there and try to go beyond those filters. Because in the same way that in the books and the Tibetan literary culture, not the modern one, but actually the more ancient one, traditional one, yes, the authors were never placed, their name was never placed at the beginning of the book or on the cover. The name is never there. It's always placed really in the last pages. Often it's also written in a way that you have a hard time to understand and even to find. Why? Because when one reads a book, one shouldn't judge the content based on the author. The book needs to be judged on the basis of the content, not of the author. Ah, this is a beautiful book. Why? Because Lama Tsongkhapa wrote it. But yes, of course, then the books of Lama Tsongkhapa are beautiful because the contents are beautiful, but we should try to do the opposite. And in the same way, when we talk with someone, if it's someone towards which we have respect, gratitude, and so on, our tendency is to put like a filter, like, okay, then whatever he says is right, is beautiful, and on the other hand, was on the other side, we put the filter, whatever she says, no, it's not fine. But if we actually try to listen to what is being said and see the intention, to try a little bit, we cannot remove the filter of our own emotions, that is not possible, we do not have the capacity, but we can somehow at least be aware that that filter is there. So I know that there is a strong jealousy. Okay, I know that I will see everything through that filter, so there must be some discount on that. And the same thing also for aversion, desire, envy, with the preconceptions. It's important, this. To me, it has already happened, like 1 month ago or 2 months. A document arrived that I had to read. It was like a letter that had been reviewed, and the person that edited that letter and made some corrections, some comments, and so on, the other times that that person did that, I didn't like the way that it was done. And there was a preconception on my side. So there was like something there. And then this correction came without me having asked for it. So when it gets there and I see that letter, I see, but look here, what does that person want? And I read the first part already with a preconception. Look, this person, this must be really horrible. Then I breathe for like 3 seconds and I say, okay, stop being a fool, read in a neutral way. And actually, it was beautiful. That person did a wonderful job. And it's interesting to see that inside of us there is a part that doesn't want to accept it. Because very often we can be really stupidly arrogant. In that case, I laughed a little bit on myself and I said, look, what a stupid. Yes, you did good, thank you. And I acknowledge this. But I recognize that behind that there was a little hidden part that was trying to say, no, now you're giving that person like victory. And this is our ruin. And for this, I also always, now we go to another extreme a bit, but this story that has been said that around like 1500 years ago in India, in the great monasteries and so on, they had a rule that was very widespread. That wasn't just about the Buddhist temples, but all the spiritual traditions that were in India at the time. And it was that we are here in this moment all together. And let's say that someone comes from another religious tradition and will come to me and say, look Lama, I don't agree with this and that point of what you teach. Going to touch some fundamental points of the vision of word that I believe in and transmit. And that person will call me for a public debate. Then he will do a debate following the dialectics, and if at the end of the debate I would agree with the other person and contradict those fundamental points that initially I transmitted, I would have had I was obliged to convert that tradition together with all the disciples. So when there were some masters that were really capable with dialectics, sometimes they would just pass and convert really whole regions. And there was even like a Buddhist master that saw that at the time there was a non-Buddhist master of Samkhya tradition, something like that, that was really basically closing all the Buddhist monasteries in a region, was very good in dialectics and so on. And it was quite a big problem because almost no one was able to win over him on debate. And so he did something that was brave with a lot of effort. Someone maybe could say not very correct, but it depends. I don't remember his name. Anyway, he went to this great master of this other tradition, dressed in a very humble way, and he offered himself to him as a servant. He knocked at the door and he said, look, I'm finding for a job. Is there someone that can give me food and a roof over my head, and I can do whatever is needed? I'm here to serve. Yes, you can come, you can try. So he was cleaning, was cooking, was doing all the services in the house for the whole family, and he was really good. So you would really see that he was like a good person with a great capacity, very intelligent and very dedicated from morning to dusk. And then like 1 year passed, 2 years, and bit by bit, as time passed, the owner of the house, there was this master of the other tradition, started bit by bit to have trust on him. So they were talking of philosophy, of other things, and so I said, you look, the boy is also intelligent. And after some time, like 7 years, at least 7 years, usually stories are like 7 or 12, but at least 7 years have passed, and until one day the master says, look, I want to teach you my philosophy, my view. And there he explains the details, the things in a detailed way, and it makes him get into his own vision of the world, explaining all things. And when all that period ends, Then he goes there to him, he say thanks, and then he said, and I invite you to public debate. Actually, I'm Buddhist, and I want to invite you in a public debate, and then he wins that debate. And that was something that at the time was very famous. And so he put this effort of staying there, to stay there like 10 years or whatever was the time. To do what? Actually, to understand. Because it is said that in order to somehow also face someone, then you have to understand that person and you have to see what are the points that lack coherence and so on. This was bringing the fact that at the time the beauty was not the fact of belonging to a tradition or the other, was coherence. Because if I am able to convince you that the vision, your view is not correct, then you, first of all, what should you follow? The truth. But actually, very often it happens that what we want to follow is our own belonging, sense of belonging. In Tibet, some time ago, it happened that the abbot of the Tashinumpa monastery was like on a very long train journey together with other monks and abbots. They were doing a journey together, and my master told me that as they were on the train, at a certain point he starts to discuss on the correct view of reality, a debate together with them and so on. All people that were very were scholars, so they had a great knowledge. But it was like, okay, you by being of different traditions, then I need to use texts as a reference that also your tradition uses. And so he was using texts of Nagarjuna, and at a certain point, after some hours of discussion, the abbot of this other monastery of another tradition called the Jonampa goes to him and says, "Look, Khyentse Rinpoche, with all the respect," because my master was much older, "with all the respect, it's beautiful to stay here and debate with you, but let's remember, at the end of the day, you are Gelugpa and I'm Jonampa." And my master was trying to say, no, the point is not belonging that you're Gelugpa, Jonampa, or this or that. The point is, we are talking about the correct view of reality. There cannot be two versions. We can have different interpretations, but I have either a phenomenon is interdependent or it's not. And so he will get into this debate. And so he was a bit disappointed, and he said, "Look, now, today there isn't this openness, like, it's not about today, it's like, it has been like that from a long time. And so I invite you to see if this is also happening inside your lives. I don't know if it has ever happened to you that there is someone reading or listening to something with whom you don't agree, like a politician of a different politic view that one believes in, or from someone from someone that one doesn't respect, and one has a hard time to accept and to say that that is true or not, because instead of checking whether it's true or not, one already puts a huge preconception, a huge filter. And so this is what I was saying before, that when we listen to the other, we already come with a preconception. And this is normal. We already put some filters of attraction, aversion, respect, and we already put various filters. And as a minimum, we should be aware that we have these filters. Why? Because we want to be coherent. We want to have truth, so to speak. We want to see what is coherent and true. I don't really care who said that. If it's something that is coherent and makes sense, whoever said that, well, good, I learned something new. If it's not, then it doesn't matter who said that. For me, it has happened to discuss with Lama Gangchen about some things. For example, there is one thing that he has always told me, and I never believed in that and never accepted, nothing so transcendental. But in Tibetan culture, this is not Buddhism, this is more like Tibetan culture. There is this, I call like folkloristic, there is who's totally convinced about it, that a male kid until 20 years ago can change sex, but not because there is the freedom of gender. No, they say that one, at a certain point, physically changes. The penis falls and becomes female. I know people that they have sworn that, and they said, no, I've seen my nephew becoming a girl. I've really seen it happen like that. And I've always said, look, you can say whatever you want, I don't believe in it. We can discuss, debate, but to me, this is really not conceivable. In my head, it just doesn't fit in. So what I want to say is that it's okay, even if it's someone towards which you have the greatest respect in the world, you know. Look, I don't believe in this. Don't take it badly. And there were cases actually when some things were told to me, and I was like, okay, I don't understand it. I put it in the waiting list because I don't have the means, neither through logic or direct experience, that it is or that it is not. There are many cases where I'm like, I don't know. It stays there like in some space where I'm not certain of yes, neither of no. And so it's important to try to have our own capacity of discernment. This in general. So I make a trivial example with news. One of the things that one should do if one is interested in news, one should at least read 3 different newspapers. At least see the same thing through different points of view, because one pulls here, the other pulls there, another one is trying to hide and pretend that it's not there. I don't know if if you've ever seen the same news told in very different ways. This happens actually very often. And our danger is to get only in one way. But actually there are different shades, different ways of interpreting. Then there are also things that are not true, that are told, but that's something else. But anyway, it's good to see different sides also, because in my experience, truth is found in between the truths. I've seen this many times. Truth is between truths. There is a story that I find quite funny, that one day the wife goes to the rabbi, and asks for advice, and he says, look, my husband is terrible because he did this and that, and he's like, yes, lady, you're right. And so a few days after that, the husband comes, and then he's like, you don't know, my wife, she's like that, and she says this, and she's done that. And he says, you're right. And after a while, they both come, and they're like, sorry, but I came to you, and you say that I'm right, and the same to her, and so who is right? You're both right. The point is that the same situation has different aspects, different sides, and from when you look from one side you see an aspect, from another side you see another aspect very often, and it's quite unlikely that we have 360 degrees very often, but we should try the best that we can to get like a wide view when we have to take like some decision or have some opinion about something. I don't know if this is clear. So before creating a version or whatever, we try to understand a little bit all the different shades that are there. That's why truth is in between truths. And this is what I've seen many times, remembering ourselves that one thing doesn't take away the other. For example, a person that acts with violence, is it a violent act? Yes. Should it be stopped? Yes. Should it repeat itself? No. Is this something that needs to be condemned and stopped? Yes, with no doubt. But we can also go and see that that person that was acting with violence, why did that person did that? And we could see that very often she was also victim of some violence that she received that brought her to act with violence. So even that person is someone that is in difficulty, that needs to be welcomed and helped. But one thing is one thing and another thing is another thing. One doesn't take away the other. But when I have a broader view, I'm able to not act with compassion towards one and hatred towards the other. I try to see in a wider way the thing. So truth is between truths. And we try the best that we can to have a wide view. To me, it happens to see people discussing and to be a little bit in between of that and to try to help one or the other. It's strange. Sometimes I find myself being a translator with a lot of people that talk Italian or English or Portuguese, because there are some times that it's really crazy to see how you're talking with each other and you don't understand each other. And so this brings us to another aspect also. So let's try to recognize that we have our own filters, at least to be aware of those. And this is about not just the most present filters, but also the temporary filters, like, okay, I'm nervous, I'm tired. For example, my mother, when she met my father, they married like a few months after they married, because my mother was already pregnant, and so they just married. That was the only way to get married, because otherwise they are too different. And my mother, at a certain point, yes, then they separated after a while, but at a certain point my mother realized that my father, when he was hungry, would get nervous. So he would always bring in her bag some snacks. He had always like some dry fruit, something. And when she would see that he was starting to give like some signs of premature anger, then it was like, here, eat. So there wasn't that reaction. And this also is to say, okay, that we know the others and we have some filters, and know that when that person is tired, that person is nervous, and you shouldn't really listen to what that person says. I have a friend, a lawyer, and she was telling me that a person professionally very good, very tough, also that she was a judge. At a certain point she was working in a lawyer's firm. The boss was a Japanese man, and she can be really strong, she can be really decisional, and sometimes her boss would pass by and he would leave a chocolate on the table, and this was the message, like, I'm exaggerating. Usually it was like when she was very nervous because she had menstruations, and so she ended up acting with aggressiveness. She would go across the lines a little bit, and so her boss, instead of scolding her or doing anything, he would just put like a chocolate there, and then she would be like, okay, I've understood. And so she would try to be more careful, because what happens is that when we understand the filters that we have, then we are more careful in our way of interacting. If I'm sad, if I'm tired, for example, if I'm tired, I become monothematic. I'm like that. If I'm very tired, then what is my priority? I'm just in that. The rest of the world doesn't exist. And in some cases, I can become very unfriendly. Because if there is someone that needs something, that looks for me, that is close by, it's as if that person didn't exist in that moment, because I try to manage my energy. I don't do it in a way that it's aware, just like a spontaneous thing. And so I just sit there, I'm doing that, just doing that. Now later, I don't even realize that person is there, and someone can not like that. And so having more awareness of that, okay, he's tired, then I try to be more careful when I... And so to understand what are the filters that we have is also important, because we listen to the other through that. We have some filters of our own traumas. And we all have these. And so, to remember that when we listen to others, when we see something, then there are our own filters, the more fixed ones and also the momentary ones. And it's important, bit by bit, to understand what are those, to have a vision that is a bit more coherent of what gets to us. There is also another important point, that is that of understanding the other better, and also remembering that as the other person is communicating, that person also has her own filters. So, for example, during years I've learned that when someone is angry, I try to listen to what she's saying and not the way that is being said. Because many times I've heard people that were very angry saying things that were very right in a very wrong way. Usually that doesn't work. And it has happened more than once to me to go to a person and say, look, what you're saying is right, but let's review the mode. Like that, it doesn't work. Sometimes it has worked. So at least you believe that I'm right? Yes. Okay, breathe a little bit, wait a little bit, because the problem is not what you're saying, but how you're saying it. And often, sometimes on our side, also to remove that part, there is someone that feels like wounded, or there is arrogance or envy or jealousy. There are many feelings that can be in between. So when we're able to see that a little bit, then we can put some discount and not take literally what is being said, because there are some feelings behind it. So, for example, I know people that when they are in their angry moments, what they say it's not worth much. But you've said that, yes. But if we had to pick and take for granted, take for something that is true, something that is said in moments of anger, then like a person once came to me, told me something in the morning, and at evening that person said something completely opposite, because she was in an opposite feeling. So I smiled a bit, and then I said, look, but there is this person that told me something in the morning and say this, and in the evening say this other thing. Which guy should I believe, the one morning or the evening? And then that person was a bit like that, and then he said the one of the morning. And so with this we see how much complex is communicating. And to communicate well, according to me, we at least need 3 factors. We can also put like a 4th. Me, first of all, I must have a good knowledge of what I want to transmit. On my side, I need to know what I want to transmit, to have clarity on that. I need to know myself a bit, and so to know what are my emotions, to see why am I saying that, have clarity on myself. Then I must allow myself to see the other, because if I tell you something, ideally it's not because I want to say it, but because I want you to understand it. Even if often one talks not because the other wants to because he wants the other to understand, but just because I want to say it. It has already happened to me many times, and it took me a long time to understand this. At the beginning, every time that a person said something, I wanted to give continuity and to answer that, but most of the time I saw that there was not that need actually, there was just a need of saying. Because sometimes just verbalizing, we use that moment as a moment to process our emotions, to put clarity with ourselves. So, not always we talk because we want the other to understand something, but when we talk because if we just want to kind of talk, then you talk to anyone. The point of having someone next to us that listens to us with no judgment, even if that person doesn't understand anything, that already means a lot. It's like in the first years that Lama Gangchen came to the West in Greece, we're talking about the beginning of the 80s, and he didn't talk any English, just Tibetan, and people would come to him and would just talk, and he learned to say no problem. And so they would tell him a lot of things, and at the end he would say no problem. But really, how? And he would just say no problem. And he would just, and like days after, people would come and they would thank, yeah, but really, look, I feel much better now. And he said that he was impressed how people had the need of someone just being there with no judgment, just listening to them, with affection, with love. And this by itself is very powerful. So if we realize that there is someone that needs, for example, just to manifest, to use us like as a moment to understand better himself or herself, it's not they're interested in our answer or whatever. To just be there with no judgment and with love, that has a tremendous power. When, on the other hand, there is the will of communicating something, it's important to have clarity on what one wants to communicate, to understand ourselves, to see our motivation, and it's important at the same time to see and understand the other. Because if I want to tell you something, I should use your language.
벽에 기토니 계셔 되게 라바이나 그런 소 가시 고그래 가시 고그 말에 라 제상 당한서 된다고 엄마 제나 따직 간다 제나 람나마 람나타 그런 고기 여바지 람마 마도 가야 펜 도고 말아 perciò io l'ho detto ok quello che succede è questo che
what happens is that I cannot pretend, I cannot expect, okay, I just said it, need to say it in a way that the other understands. And many times I ask, have you all understood? Yes. And I ask myself, what have they understood? One of my masters, Geshe Rinpoche, with a disciple, friend of mine, another Lama, when he was teaching, he had a very stable memory, but he had like a difficult time to understand some things. So my master, when he was teaching something that was a very important argument, and so it was a private teaching. Me, just once I was there, he would make the other repeat back. Okay, he would explain the concept. Okay, now you repeat it, whatever I said. This, okay. Okay, sometimes he would say, now, Lendl plane, where is it gone? Okay, repeat. Okay, step back. Because not always necessarily if someone says, I've understood, that person has really understood. But the fact is that if I want you to understand, I need to speak your language. It is me who needs to adapt to you, not the other way around. So the act of communicating requires humility, because I shouldn't speak for myself. I should talk with you. I should speak for you. Many times I've seen in situations of congresses the people that would seem like they just were talking for themselves because they need to talk to tell the thing. But in that case, we're there to listen because we want to receive something, but you need to speak my language. And even when we use some terminology that the other person doesn't understand, it's quite unlikely that someone will be so humble to just say, what does that mean? I have not understood. So if I talk with you, then I need to adapt to you, to your mentality, to your state, mental state of the moment possibly. I need to see you. It's very difficult to communicate with someone if first, at the basis, we don't allow ourselves to see the other. But there are some things that we do not have the patience to see the other. We just want the other to understand, and that's it, and that doesn't work. Because to see the other also means to see if whether it's the right moment to say what we want to say. Because to say the thing in the wrong moment doesn't work. So there is not only the way we say something, but also the moment. And so for this to communicate well, there is also this part of humility, respect towards the other, of allowing oneself to see the other, understand the other, and to adapt to the other, to make a translation of what is our experience, concept, and so on, and to try to bring it to the other person. I remember sometimes that I was really shocked to talk with someone and to try to explain a concept that for me was trivial, and to see that that person, that thing, was not able to understand it. And I remember, like, I was here in Milan many years ago, and I was really trying to go around and around in many different ways, trying to make 1,000 examples, and really I wouldn't get there. It's not that the other person is not capable. I didn't find the means to explain you that thing.
Avrei bisogno di passare delle cose prima, magari non era il momento per poter farti capire quella cosa. Ok? Perciò ricordiamoci che quando parliamo con qualcuno, quando scriviamo,
so let's remember that when we talk with someone, to have clarity on what we want to transmit. I say this because there are times where we're not even honest with ourselves with what we want to say. For example, it can happen that one is angry with the other, so I'm angry with you, and what I want to tell you is that I'm angry with you, or that you're meaningless. Somehow I want to step on you. So there is an intention. It's different than the words that are being said. Doesn't have anything to do with that. Also the argument and so on. But I'm trying to tell you that other thing. And when we don't have sincerity on this with ourselves, at the end, it ends that we don't understand each other, and there is maybe some discussion, because that sincerity with ourselves is lacking about what we ourselves want to transmit. And as we said in the beginning, in communication is mostly non-verbal. So that motivation, that feeling, that emotion that comes with it says a lot. And often it's not coherent also with the words that have been said. And so let's try somehow to see that communicating is not easy, or at least that's what I believe. And there are now experts of communication, of many things, really because it's something that it's not easy. It's not that we have to call like an expert of communication, otherwise we will be all the time with someone that does that, like at a family, job. But at least let's try to not take it for granted, to put some energy there, to put some value in communicating with awareness, and to receive and to give back. And one of the other aspects that comes with this is that also we have habits. So for example, there is the habit of not listening until the end. There is the habit that when the other person is saying something, we, as I said before, the brain is trying to forecast, but we're trying to do it too much. So it's like the other one already knows what the other is going to say before that person ends. To me, it has happened already to begin to say something, and the other is like ending the sentence. If you know it, then I don't say it anymore. No, but end. No, you already know. But is that what you wanted to say? No, but because you know it anyway. But actually, on our side, it's important to understand until the end, to try to not get into this mode. These are all habits that we create. This is something, and then there are also situations where we are boring, yes. When there are some people, maybe someone that comes to your mind that when you see that person, but also could be ourselves, that when you see that person, you kind of already know the argument. Also with ourselves, when we complain with ourselves, try to put like categories of the arguments that you complain about with yourselves. According to me, there are no more than 5. Macro categories are probably like 3, the main ones. Then they change with time, but in general, there are not many. We are boring. But it's also important for ourselves to try to understand what is there between the lines. Both with ourselves and with the others. I've seen many times people manifesting aggressive words that actually were saying, I need affection. I don't know if you've ever seen this. In these cases, my experience is to say, okay, yes, I give you affection, but wait a little bit. First, this moment of aggressiveness ends, and then, yes, I'm here for you. But I try to not get into your aggressiveness. Because at the end, it just ends up hurting more. So, the point that I wanted to bring today was this, to try as much as we can to be sincere with ourselves in the communication with the other, and to have more awareness in listening also, in receiving and also in giving. And we need a lot of sincerity with ourselves. I don't believe that the vow of not talking really works a lot for us. I remember once in a journey that we were in Tibet, and some people took the vow during the journey, during the trip, to not talk. And they had like a kind of a notebook where they would write. And I remember this scene of a dinner all together, there were people were chatting, and this person that took the vow of not talking, that as they were chatting, he would just put in the middle and write and show them. But look, the vow should be more like not listening rather than not talking. They should go together otherwise. But according to me, there is another vow that I invite you to try, that is very interesting, that is not saying what is not necessary. Try one day. One wakes up in the morning. Okay, from today until the dawn of tomorrow, I will not say what is not necessary. Let's remember that to talk, to say, also includes messages, emails. Do not say what is not necessary. And you will see how much it decreases the quantity of what you say, like 10% maybe, I don't know, you will see. Maybe a bit more, probably. And it's an interesting experiment. It's possible that if you try to put this in act for a long time, then one can seem a little bit like unfriendly. Me, there were times where I put this into practice in a way with a lot of attention, then it becomes like more automatic. There were times where I was like, okay, I am in a context that I don't know well, with people with which there is somehow a need to exchange, to know each other, and so that kind of saying a necessary thing is a necessity somehow. Is this clear? So in that case, I say that because I'm saying something that of which there is need, even if I go say, today is cold because the weather. Actually, there is no need to talk about that. We feel it on the skin. But in some cases, for a social matter or a matter of welcoming the other, it has a function. It has a function other than just of saying.
Esiste una flessibilità nel suo insieme, ci vuole sincerità nel dire non dirò ciò che non è necessario.
And this, anyway, starts to give us awareness of the power of our speech. Because at the end of all of this, where we get to is that our word has a tremendous power in conditioning our mind. Our word happens in two ways. In the way that we verbalize our thoughts and feelings to the others, and in the way that we verbalize to ourselves. For example, when someone talks to me, what the other person is saying has two moments. There is the moment where that person has said, and then there is the kind of reviewing that. I don't know if it has ever happened to you that you were kind of reviewing what the other person said. That person said, yeah, but why did he say it like this? Could have been like that. What happens is that when we talk to ourselves, because the biggest interlocutor is ourselves. The words that we say, they condition our mind. We think through words. Try to elaborate a thought with no words.
Faticoso, no?
It's difficult. There are some emotions, some basic emotions, and it's also strong. When we feel something and we're not able to put it in words, we also don't know how to manage that thing, that it's there. And it's here that there is like the beauty of art, the importance of means that allow us to express things that we're not able to put in words. That is important. Also with music, with painting, in an infinity of things that are beautiful and that are there, that can help us to express. But normally our mind, the rational part, mostly, works on the basis of words. And the words that we say condition the way that we think, constantly. It's incredible how one word said, one sentence put there, has a power of working on us for years even. It's as if I would come to you now and I will tell you, look, that you know that Devadatta is a terrible person. Really, you shouldn't trust him. It's really a bad person. If you see him, just stay far away from me. Also, don't make him understand that you want to be far away. Just ignore him completely. It's really like a very, very bad person. Like, okay, 30 seconds of Devadatta criticism. Let's say that from in 10 years you meet Devadatta. If you don't have Alzheimer or whatever, will you be influenced by what I've told you? That works inside. One word said, something listened, remains in us and in influences. We don't even know why. We have not even seen Devadatta ever. We use Devadatta because Devadatta was the cousin of Buddha that tried to kill him like 5 times. The story goes that he was very jealous of Buddha, and so he made a lot of chaos at the moment. He tried to create division in the Sangha, in the monastic, tried to take the power and things like that. So for this, I don't know why. So for this reason, in texts, it is said, okay, Devadatta. But it's interesting that one thing that is said leaves an imprint in our mind that is not indifferent, and also something heard. And so there is an aspect where what we hear, what we see, actually, it's like the food that we eat. We nourish our being reacts in front of our senses. And so one of the most powerful ways is word. And it's for this that the way that we talk is fundamental. And one of the first levels when we talk about changing the mind, transforming the mind, the first is to change the word. Because if we are really able to have more awareness of words and to direct speech in a way that it's aware, then after that it becomes much more easier to direct the mind and to be aware of the mind. If we are really not able to do that with words, then let alone with mind. And so it's for this that, okay, sometimes I go to extremes. For many years I've studied in a way that every word has a fundamental power, like in dialectics. You have books that you read, there is not one word that is put there that is just like unnecessary extra. Everything has a why and how. Like this text that is called Abhisamaya Lankara, the first verse that in Tibetan says, these are the praises of the text, and you spend like 1.5 years to study it, because every word is a huge context with a lot of meanings, and when you debate, every little part has a weight. And also monks that was very used to debate in Tibet, very often they were not welcome the houses of people in villages, because they say that they were unfriendly and that they would give too much weight to every word said. But people that are not used to debates, they say, but I say just for saying. No, there is no such thing as just saying for saying. But the point is that we don't have to be all so rigid on what we say, but to be careful that our way of talking conditions our way of thinking and the narratives that we go and create. The more we repeat something, the more that thing gets inside. The more we listen, see something, the more that thing gets inside. And so also what I said before, if we go and watch the news, and read the news, let's try to read at least 3 different sources to see different ideas. Otherwise, we will always have a polarized vision. This is what happens, because the more I listen to something, the more that becomes the narrative of the reality. But there isn't only that aspect, there are also others. And so, if we have control over speech, if we learn to have awareness and to direct speech, this is one of the first possible tools to change our mind. Our way of talking conditions mind. So if I eliminate from my vocabulary some words, I eliminate also some concepts. I add some words, I add new concepts, because words represent concepts, feelings. I've understood this the first time when I was like 15 years old, when I read 1984 of Orwell, and inside of that book, there is the part that talks about language. I think in Italian it's called Newspeak.
Questa neolingua, la nuova lingua, come sarà tradotto in italiano,
one of the fundamental characteristics of this new language, Newspeak, it was a language that as years pass, the vocabulary also decreases, like there are less terms. This is also because the big brother, the government, was controlling everything, was removing some words that were representing concepts that it didn't want people to have. So how can I control thought? By controlling speech. And when I read that, it was the worst moment to read that book. It was like in the midst of an exam that I had to give, and I read it and I really liked it. And I understood one thing, that it was, wow, I can use it to my own favor. There are some concepts that are harmful, I eliminate them. At the beginning it's very artificial, but after a while it works. And the example that I've made many times, but that it works well, is to remove if. If I had said, if I had done, if you were like that, if you had done like that. If we remove if, we will see that the other part of the sentence cannot sustain itself. And so that ruminating of the past and opening to a thousand of possibilities collapses. What is there is what it's there today. But one of the ways to stop some thoughts is to remove some words. So I begin to say, okay, I shouldn't say this word, and you try to rephrase, but you don't find a way, and so bit by bit that way of thinking decreases. The other example that we have made many times is not say you have said, but to say I have understood. So I have understood. And this already changes a lot. Another way that changes a lot also is to say there is only instead of there is still. Changes. If I say only there is only some water, there is still some water. If I say there is only, there is like a threat. There is an opportunity. And it's crazy how one word changes completely our perspective of what it's there. I have only a few years to live, maybe less, I don't know, but I still have some years to live. That changes completely. The same thing. So for this we should really be careful to use our word with awareness and to our own favor. For example, I don't have problems with bad words, with swearing. Sometimes there are people like saying bad words with me and we're like, Lama, I'm sorry, like if they committed like a sin. In Italian I know basically all of them. Because when I was in Brazil as a kid, there was the husband of my mother, and he would really get angry in the traffic, and he was Italian. So I've heard all of them. And I really don't have any problem with that. Really, I've learned with Lama Gangchen that he was like the person that has the least taboos in the world. So it's not because like you say swear words that you're a bad person. But the point is that, okay, I try to go and see what is the original meaning of swear words. And it's incredibly violent very often. And so when I say that thing, even out of context from its original context, even somehow I transmit that concept. And it depends whether I want to condition my mind to that or not. The only language of which I don't know swear words is Tibetan, where you really have few. And it's interesting that in our Western languages, very often swear words have like a sexual a relationship. In Tibetan, never heard of that. The only swear words, if you want to say something bad to someone, you say the corpse of your father or your mother. This is really to wish the worst to someone, to really say something bad, but this is it. There are maybe like two, but really not much. We create habits to use some words that have meanings or meanings that were originally violent, and we use them with lightness. But anyway, that they maintain that meaning. And so this is to say that words that I say, as I said before, condition my way of thinking. And it's like eating. What food do I want to eat? What do I put inside of me? The other day I was talking actually with a doctor on like, okay, what is a drug? A substance that alters the chemical state of body and that creates addiction. That is a drug, according to me. Do you agree or not? So a substance that when I get in contact with that substance, it goes and alter my chemical state and create addiction, it's a drug. But I believe that the drug shouldn't really be on things that doesn't have to be like things that are consumed orally or through the veins. It can be consumed through sight or with the hearing or with the smell. Because when I see some images and the dynamic of that image alter my chemical state and they create addiction, they are a drug. Because we consume not only with food, we consume with all our senses. We transform ourselves through all of our senses, and there is also a chemical reaction through all of our senses. And for this, so we don't take in consideration of this. Maybe we just think, okay, I eat that and that is a drug, but what I see with my eyes, no. But actually, yeah, I think so. And there are more and more studies that show that many of us, yes, we are addicted. We have a strong addiction with the usage of smartphones, social media, and so on, that create a chemical effect and create addiction. There is a chemical reaction in the body and there is addiction, not small. And this is to say that the concept that says every interaction brings inevitably a transformation, it's something that it's there in every moment. And every interaction that we have with what I see, what I hear, what I touch, what I taste, with what I say and what I hear, and also what I think. And so, the more we are careful about our own interactions, the more we can transform in a way that it's aware. And one of the powerful tools that we have for this is the usage of our speech. Last week we talked about the power of visualization, the week before we saw the part of mantras and so on. One of the other tools, very powerful tools to transform our beings, is our own word, speech, the way that we talk, not just with the others, but also of us with ourselves. And the interesting thing is that at the beginning, no, yeah, but after a while, yes. When we take that commitment of not saying what is not necessary, we are able, bit by bit, to arrive to not think what is not necessary. And it's really a wonderful gift that one can make to himself. The other day I was last Saturday in Albagnano. There was one of our friends here, and in his presentation, very beautiful, he said one thing, everything correct, but he used like a term that even if it's the right term, I believe that it's wrong. The term is, I try to tell the context quickly. At a certain point, scientifically, someone realized that the energy of the body, 20% of it is consumed by the brain. So that small organ consumes an enormous quantity of energy, and they were making research on how, and so they put some people like in the machine to do take all measurements and so on, and they did some tests.
Dei compiti, a fare dei compiti precisi.
No, they had to do some tasks, so like calculations, like this kind of things. And what they realized is that when they gave like a specific task to the person, the brain actually was consuming less energy, not more. But how? How is this possible? And from this comes the term that is the default mode. That is the basic way of the brain thinking about 1,000 things. That is, what happens is that when we do something specific, we stop thinking about 1,000 things, and this relaxes, consumes less energy. Me, for example, I've relaxed really a lot programming, when I learned programming. I would spend sessions of like 6 hours without stopping. For example, making lists in Excel, repetitive jobs, I really like them. Unfortunately, it has been a while since I've done them, but when I've made like the Tibetan calendar, for example, in the studies, to calculate when there will be a solar eclipse or a lunar eclipse, there are infinite tables, and I copied them all. And to spend those hours to just copy numbers relaxes a lot. I don't know if it's me who is completely out of his mind. I imagine that someone else has a similar experience. And for me to just program, I learned to program a bit with PHP. I really liked to just spend hours there, and it relaxed me a lot. And what happens is that when one does one thing, mind, the body consumes less energy. The problem is when the mind starts to jump from one thing to the other. Like first it's here, then it's there, then it's then at a certain point some thoughts come in, then one doesn't know how they get there. Then it goes like somewhere completely different. And this fact of thinking constantly of one thing and another thing consumes a lot of energy. What I believe it's wrong is the name that is given to it. Because when you say that this is the default mode, then you should say no, this is the unhealthy way. We can be different. We can somehow just relax. Why do we have to think 25,000 things? Even if this is the normality, normal doesn't mean healthy. Sometimes we use this term normal to say, it's normal, then it's fine. On many things, much better to be anormal. The important thing is whether that mode is good for me or is harmful. And one of the things that these ruminating 1,000 thoughts, jumping from one thing to the other, is not good for us. And one of the ways to change this is to change our way of talking. Because when I remove the if, already I'm removing like a 25% of thoughts. Maybe like for some you even remove like 80. It takes a while to get there, but if you really remove if, then you take away a lot of thoughts. Then you start to relax a bit, you start to have less this inner rumination. And so for this I really invite you to observe your way of talking and to see that it's possible to talk with awareness, to think before saying, also before listening. I also learned this that when one says something, there are times that I listen to it again, like 2 or 3 times before saying, yes, said that. Because it has happened to me many times, like of thinking that that person said something, and then actually when I went to check, it was something else. And so also before saying something to the other, to think about what I want to say and how. And then there are times where we just go to a person and say, I need to talk, can you listen to me? You can also put in your headphones, but I need to talk, and that's fine. So what I invite you to do with all of this is, let's try as much as we can to have more awareness with our words and to give it a direction. Remembering that word is about what I say, what I write, about the word that I have with myself, and about also my listening, the way that I listen to the others, to listen with more awareness. This, with sincerity, makes a really tremendous difference. It's one of the most powerful tools that we have to transform ourselves.
Questo è quello che oggi volevo condividere principalmente, e volevo approfittare oggi, prima di concludere tutto, di fare una meditazione insieme. Okay?
Also today I wanted to do a meditation all together, also because how we said at the beginning, we communicate much more without words rather than words, and one of the things that we can transmit is to share some experiences together. And so when one also is able to meditate with others, then one can also do it somewhere else. You have like that tool. But anyway, with meditation you cannot meditate for someone else, but when you do it with someone else, then it's like a way of saying, look, you can do it. And that also brings one to have more trust in oneself, confidence. I imagine that you've already meditated at least a couple of hours today, so now we do a little bit more. The truth actually is that we meditate really little, so at least we try to do something together. More than explaining, I will give the instructions as we do it. First of all, we sit with our back straight but not tense. Our shoulders are relaxed. Our head is slightly forward. Mouth is relaxed, with the tongue possibly touching the palate. Our eyes are slightly closed, looking downwards.
Semplicemente osserviamo il nostro proprio respiro.
We simply observe our own breathing,
Senza forzare,
without forcing it.
semplicemente
We simply
osserviamo il
observe
movimento del corpo,
the movement of the
respiriamo.
body as we breathe.
Osserviamo la sensazione alle narici,
We observe the sensation at the nostrils of the air coming in and going out.
osserviamo se il nostro respiro è profondo,
We observe whether our breathing is deep or superficial,
regolare o
regular
irregolare.
or irregular.
Osserviamo la temperatura
We
dell'aria,
observe the temperature of the air.
più fresca quando
There is
inspiriamo,
more fresh as we breathe in and slightly
tiepida quando
warmer as we
espiriamo.
breathe out.
Con gentilezza
With gentleness,
portiamo il nostro respiro
we
ad un
bring our
respiro
breathing
addominale.
to an abdominal breathing.
Inspiriamo
We breathe in
profondamente,
deeply,
portando l'aria sotto
bringing the
l'ombelico,
air below the
fino a
navel
gonfiare leggermente
until
la
the
pancia.
belly swells slightly.
E poi
And then we
espiriamo
breathe out deeply
profondamente fino a
until
contrarre
the
leggermente
belly
l'addome.
contracts slightly.
Inspiro
Breathe in and breathe out.
ad inspirare
As we breathe
in
in,
un flusso
in a
continuo,
continuous flow,
dopo aver riempito
after
le parti
having
basse
filled the
della
lower
colonna,
part of the abdomen,
continuiamo
we
ad
continue
inspirare
breathing
fino a riempire anche
until
la parte
we also
alta del
feel the
petto
upper part of the chest,
e fino a sentire un lieve
and until
sollievo,
feeling
rialzo
a
dello stomaco,
slight,
quasi impercettibile.
almost imperceptible
Inspiriamo tutta
movement
la
of raising the
respiro.
shoulders, and we breathe all the air that is possible.
Ad espirare
And as we breathe out,
svuotiamo prima la
we
parte
empty first the
alta
upper part
del petto
of the chest,
e per
and
ultimo
then
svuotiamo la
lastly
parte
we
bassa
empty
dell'addome
the
fino a contrarre leggermente l'addome.
lower part of the abdomen until it contracts slightly.
Dopo aver inspirato,
After having breathed in,
senza fretta,
with no
ritorniamo ad
rush,
inspirare nello
we go
stesso
back
modo,
to breathing
permettendo di
in,
creare un
in the same
lieve
way,
spazio
allowing
tra
ourselves to create
l'inspirazione e
a
l'espirazione,
small
tra
space in
l'espirazione
between
e
the in-breath and the
l'inspirazione.
out-breath, and between the out-breath and the
Quindi
in-breath.
inspiro
So I
profondamente,
breathe in deeply,
riempendo prima la
filling
pancia,
first the
poi il
belly, then the
petto,
chest,
Espiro
And breathe
profondo,
out deeply,
ruotando per
emptying
il
first
petto.
the chest and then the belly.
Inspiro.
Breathe in. And breathe out.
Inspiriamo contando
We
fino a
breathe
4.
in, counting to 4.
Tratteniamo l'aria
Hold the air,
contando fino a 2.
counting to 2.
Espiriamo contando fino a 4.
Breathe out, counting to 4. And hold
contando fino
again the air, counting to 2.
Quindi
So
inspiro
breathe in
4,
4.
trattengo
Hold
2.
2.
Espiro
Breathe
4.
out 4.
Trattengo
Hold
2.
2.
Inspiro 4.
Breathe in 4.
Inspiro 4.
Breathe in 4.
Trattengo 4.
Hold 4.
Espiro 4.
Breathe out 4.
E trattengo 4.
And hold 4.
Quindi inspiro
So
4.
breathe in 4.
Trattengo 4.
Hold 4. Breathe out 4.
Trattengo 4.
Hold 4.
Inspiro 4.
Breathe in 4.
Inspiro 4.
Breathe in 4.
Trattengo 6.
Hold 6.
Espiro 6.
Breathe out
E
6.
trattengo 4.
And hold 4.
Quindi inspiro
So
4.
breathe in 4.
Trattengo 6.
Hold 6. Breathe out 6.
Trattengo 4.
Hold 4.
Inspiro 4.
Breathe in 4.
Si è confortevole, portiamo.
If it's comfortable,
Inspiro 4.
we breathe in with 4, hold with 8, breathe out with 8, and hold with 4. If that was uncomfortable, then we just stick with a lower number. So breathe in 4, ideally holding up to 8, then breathe out 8 and hold 4. So breathe in 4, hold 8, breathe out 8,
Trattengo 4.
hold 4,
Inspiro 4.
breathe in 4.
Manteniamo il respiro in 4 fasi.
We maintain the breathing in 4 phases. Breathe in, hold, and breathe out, hold. When we breathe in, we imagine that we receive rays of light and nectar that come from any sacred being of the nature of love and compassion and wisdom with the power of healing. These rays of light come inside our body from the head, the heart, bringing us to a state of peace. And as we hold the air, these rays of light are absorbed in us, in every part of us. And as we breathe out, we eliminate all the tensions accumulated inside of ourselves. Tensions on a physical level, tensions on an emotional level, both those that have been generated more recently and those accumulated for a long time. As we hold after having breathed out, we feel the lightness of having eliminated these tensions. Then we breathe in again, light. So breathe in light and nectar, receiving the blessings. Hold the air, absorbing that light and nectar in every part of my being. Breathe out, loosening all the negativities, tensions, and so on. Hold in feeling that that tension has gone away. So breathe in. One can also focus on a specific point of the body, on a specific emotion, or in general. Breathe in and receive. Hold and absorb. Breathe out and eliminate. Hold, and I feel the state of having eliminated that tension. And breathe in, I receive the blessings.
Piano piano.
Bit by bit, we imagine that we become more and more full of light, in a relaxed state where the tensions of body and mind have melted. We imagine a state of an infinite inner space filled with love and gratitude, where we are in harmony with ourselves, at peace with the past, the present, and trusting the future, at peace with the future, in harmony with ourselves and the other beings that surround us. A feeling of love towards ourselves that expands towards the others. We breathe in with awareness and we allow ourselves to relax in this inner state. So I breathe in, hold, Breathe out. Hold.
Inspiro.
And breathe in.
Manteniamo la consapevolezza sul respiro,
We maintain the awareness on the breathing,
su questo infinito spazio
on this
interiore,
infinite inner space.
e concludiamo
And
facendo
we
una
conclude
dedica
making a dedication
in cui ci
where we
permettiamo
allow
per un
ourselves
attimo di
for an
andare
instant to go
oltre il
beyond
nostro proprio
our own
egoismo
selfishness
e desiderare che
and
ogni
to
essere,
wish that every being,
indipendentemente chi
independently
sia, di dove
from
sia, in
who
quale
that,
situazione si
that
trovi,
being is or what situation
possa essere in pace,
is, that
che possa essere amato
that
e
being may be
sentire
at
amore,
peace and feel loved and be loved,
che ogni essere possa avere
that
saggezza,
every being may
un
have
buon
wisdom and a
discernimento,
good discernment,
che possa avere la capacità di agire con
that he may have
coerenza
the capacity
sulla
of
base
acting
della
with
saggezza e
coherence on the
dell'amore,
basis of wisdom and love,
e che ovunque ci
and
sia
that
l'oscurità,
wherever there is
le
darkness,
proprie ombre, i propri veleni
one's own
mentali,
shadows,
la
mental
ignoranza,
defilements,
che in
ignorance,
questi luoghi arrivi
that
la
in these
luce, la
places
saggezza
light of
dell'amore,
wisdom and
portando
love
gradualmente la
comes,
pace.
gradually bringing peace.
Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Vagishwari Mum. Om Vagishwari Mum. Om Vagishwari Mum. Om Vagishwari Mum. Om Vajrapani Hum. Om Vajrapani Hum. Om Vajrapani Hum. Om Vajrapani Hum. Om Maritse Mama Swaha. Om Maritse Mam Swaha. Om Maritse Mam Swaha. Om Maritse Mama Swaha. Jetsu alame kutse rapten chi namkara chinle chokchur gepada losan tempe drume sasumgi drove munsel taktu ne gyur chi kiewa kuntu yanda lamadang dralme cheki pela lonche chi Sada lamge yunte rabzone dorje change kopa Nyur tobe sho nimo dele tsendele nime kuyan dele ninsen takto dele pe koncho sumke chingi lo koncho sumke ngodrubo tsol koncho sumke trashi shon.
Dawn or dusk, a night or midday, may the three jewels grant us their blessings. May they help us to achieve all realizations and to sprinkle the path of our lives with various signs of auspiciousness. I just wanted to communicate briefly. I just remembered that in next week I will not be here in Milan because I've decided, finally I found the moment, actually more than having decided, to take care of a small health problem that I have, because I'm convinced that when we find someone that has the right method for that kind of problem, needs to be applied. And in my case, for the problem that at this moment I have at the arm and the neck and so on, there is one female doctor that for me works in the Netherlands. She's like a small Chinese lady, champion of Kung Fu. Anyway, I will go to her, and for this reason, the whole next week I will not be there. We'll have to leave like Monday and come back like 10 days after, because like it's a treatment that requires us to be there for a while. I've already done to go back and forth, but also to do that, to go back and forth. Partly you lose what you gained, in a few words, so I need to stay a few days there. And then the month of November I had to go to Brazil, but actually I postponed it to the month of March. And this moment I will take some time. Still I need to understand but like how to do a retreat, because, and to rest a bit, because I don't remember when it was like, but I think at least from June that I haven't stopped, and so the body starts to give some signs, like you need to rest, to stop, and so on. And so for this I postponed the trip to Brazil, and during this time of November I still have to figure out how to organize my time and so on. But the idea is to do some retreat, to read, meditate, to rest, to dedicate myself to this. Someone told me a while ago, Lama, I didn't imagine that also llamas have health problems. It's a body like any other body, so as a minimum we should give the good example to take care of it in the best way according to one's capacities. So when we realize that something is not right, the sooner you face it, the better it is. So during this period, during the month of November, that probably we want to see each other, actually it's also like a moment of investment. So it's like when we allow ourselves to be silent a bit, to read and to rest, to also to get bored somehow, that allows to create and to bring out something that is also important. And this, because like after what I do is sharing, so if I have a way to nourish myself also, that helps. So I just wanted to share a bit the program, but I invite you anyway to come to the Kunpen and to continue to practice and so on in this period. Also because at the end, like Buddha Shakyamuni has said and many other masters, I cannot take your suffering away like you remove the dirt with a broom. I cannot clean away your mental defilements, so as you remove the dirt from a cloth from water. I can show you what is good for you to cultivate and what is good to be abandoned also. And so for this I say we are here to share, and then everyone, each one is on his own path. So when I'm here, I'm very happy of being here, but when I'm not here, let's not create addiction, the Lama should be here. I really hope it's not like that, but it's really joyful to be together, and then we always continue together. This is all. We will, anyways, like Lama Gangchen said, see you sometimes, see you every moment, and this, you always said it. Thank you. Have a good evening, everyone.